Welcome back with Talking with Tiffynee. Today we are here and we are talking about self allowance. It's Self Sundays, and on Sundays we focus on the self and we understand what is it about ourselves that we can fix, we can adjust, things that we can make better. So thank you for tuning in and joining us. Today I have a special guest, but before I announce her, I am going to, like how I like to start now, is to read you an excerpt out of this because has something to do with it. And I am reading out of chapter 1, page 20, if you have the book. It is called, I Think You Like That Ish, because it's about self-allowance. In episode 1, season 4 of Insecure, Molly turns to Issa and says, you know, your life doesn't have to be this messy, right? Sometimes I think you like that shit. I love Molly's concept, but not necessarily in the particular situation. Still, I'm convinced that some of us prefer to stay in complicated and messy situations. Do you know how often I ask people if they like to be mad? Often. And when I ask them, they look at me with a stunned face like, what do you mean? I cannot believe that you think I like to be angry all the time. Newsflash, being mad is a choice. And sis, if you're mad all the time, you have become comfortable with being mad. Anything that keeps recurring in your life, good or bad, you like it. It's quite common for people to stay in their natural environments. Researchers say that humans can adapt to almost anything. I just wish more of us would adapt to true happiness and success. The idea that most humans don't learn from their own mistakes, have a better chance of learning from their successes than their own mistakes, has been bounced around for quite some time. Let's take a further step. A study at MIT showed that the brain demonstrated that it retains more after a success than past failures. The brain neurons can keep a memory of recent successes and failures during learning and perform better after doing it right than after doing it wrong. The research indicates that what society suspects is that people learn from their own mistakes, which isn't true. We have shown that brain cells keep track of whether recent behaviors are successful or not, Miller said. Furthermore, cells have become more finely tuned with what animals was learning when the behavior was successful. After failure, there was little or no change in the brain, nor was there any improvement. This is from a research thing I found. Furthermore, researchers found that if you repeat the same mistakes, you will have less active brain. Yes, I said it. If you're sitting here at this very moment wondering if your brain activity registers on the low side, I guess that would have to determine on how many times it takes you to get it. There are always ways to unlearn this behavior and head towards a life of more wins. All it takes is accepting that the issue isn't always someone else, but yourself. Sis, is it you? A wise person learns from one's mistakes. A wiser one learns from others' mistakes. But the wisest person learns from another's successes. A source of a whole bunch of people on Google, but John Maxwell said this one. I know some individuals think that after surviving through being angry, mad, sad for so long, why would you want to adapt to the unknown feeling of peace and happiness? Like, who wants that? Sis, I want it. And from your social media feed, it looks like you want it too. Obtaining it is not possible. It's possible. It is not out of the ordinary. The one thing about the unknown is that it's foreign. So what does foreign mean? It means a strange and unfamiliar. So adjust to it, but don't run from it. So in this episode, we talk about the things that we allow, because being mad is an allowance. We allow ourselves to be mad. We allow things to happen and stuff like that. We allow ourselves to be happy, right? But in this, how much of it do we actually take accountability for? I am so honored to welcome my special guest, Christina Weatherby. And she will be joining me today on Self Allowance. Round of applause.
Ooh,
Hey, beautiful.
Hey, beautiful. How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you this morning? Well, it's not morning where you're at. You are in Atlanta, Georgia,
I
right?
am.
What
I
time is it
am.
over there?
2:05
Two.
to be exact. Yes.
Well, you're enjoying your afternoon. You look beautiful. Can you tell everybody about yourself?
Oh, I am a Gemini. I'm just kidding. So I'm a 40-year-old mom of three. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. My profession, I'm a respiratory therapist. I also have a brand that I'm working on. I actually started with my one of my best friends, my line sister, Karis Cassius. It's called No Filter Moms. And it's pretty much creating a platform where women can be honest and open about their journeys through motherhood. What Karis and I find is that as we create a lot of mom friends, have outings, things like that, a lot of us feel like we're alone in some of the things that we struggle with on our journey. And one of the things that's very healing to us is to get together and be very candid about what we deal with on our journey through motherhood, whether it's with our families, specifically our kids and husbands, our personal needs, personal failures, personal successes, our jobs, careers, things like that. We find that there's a lot of healing when other women realize that they're not the only one that they feel isolated in their struggle. A lot of us share a lot of the similar issues. And so No Filter Moms is really about bringing light to that and allowing other women to be able to connect and bond. I guess in some ways we do want to create solutions, but it's not necessarily about the solutions. It's really more about just connecting.
Right. You know, it's so funny that you say that, because I don't think what we understand is that the solutions come from when we actually express our vulnerability to others.
Transparency.
Like, yeah, me and you have so many conversations, and we have it's so funny when I get off the phone with you, I feel so full because speaking of self-allowance, I was allowing myself to do something wrong until I told Christina what I was doing. And then she's like, okay. And she kind of told me what I needed to be doing. And it's like the allowing of myself. And so just to get into that, what is self-allowance? And it is the amount of something that is permitted, especially within a set of regulations and a specific purpose. We have to recognize that we allow things, and then there's a difference between what we accept, which is next week's episode. And the things that we allowed, we give permission. Like permission is asking, hey, can I come in? Hey, can I do this? And so we don't recognize that a lot of things that we do, we allow it to happen to us. And how do we manage that? And how do we allow more good things? And how do we disallow bad things? So what are some things that you allow, good and bad, in your life that you can actually distinguish between?
I think I allow myself to overcommit sometimes. Well, often. I'm getting better. And I want to also acknowledge that you also have helped me work through a lot as well. That's the great thing about sisterhood, is having that transparency with each other and working through our issues together, right?
Right.
And one of the things that, in one of our conversations that you pointed out is that I do overcommit. And in a lot of ways, I get really worked up when all those commitments kind of converge in one day, 1 hour, 1 week. And I get really freaked out. And to me, I think a simple solution is I guess prioritizing maybe, and sometimes just saying no, which I've got better at. Sometimes it's hard to prioritize when it's family. I think I tend to put my family before me a lot, which I think a lot of women have in common. But since you asked for one example, because I have many, I'll just that one. I think a lot of things at work. I am very much passionate about the work I do. Like I said, I'm a respiratory therapist. I work with children. And I'm very big on keeping my commitment at work. I recently stepped down from a leadership role. And it wasn't because I think there was more being asked of me because I was a high performer. And I started to realize that, in a lot of ways, being asked to do more felt very rewarding for me, because that is a compliment to my work ethic, right?
Yes, it is.
At a point in my life where I had committed so much to that job, just because, there were some challenges when I walked into the department, and I really became very close with my leadership team, my staff. And so I felt very committed, even though I was extremely stressed out. And I'm talking about weight gain, my hair was thinning, all these things I hadn't experienced before, because I usually was able to cope very well, but I wasn't practicing good self-allowance because I was taking on more and more stress at work. And so when they asked me to take on more responsibility, I was proud of myself, but it was very, very tough time in my life because I actually said no. Step down. And so for a very ambitious person who's all about career building and seeking growth in life, for me to take a step back in the other direction was terrifying, but I knew that I needed to do that.
That is so good. And I love that you said that, because God was just speaking to me about this yesterday. And it's so funny because I didn't see the connection in this until just now, until you said that,
Mm-hmm.
about how I indulge myself into things, and how I'll just, because I'm good at it.
Right.
Because I'm good at a lot of things,
Mhm.
I overgive.
That's right.
And I felt like God was like, I don't mind you overgiving, but when you overgive, you allow people to undergive.
Mm.
And could you imagine if I'm trying to get them just to give?
That's right. That's
And
right.
because of your overgiving, you are creating a disruption in what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And I've recognized that as a parent. I've recognized that as a wife. I've
All right.
recognized it as a coworker,
Yeah.
as a CEO of a
Mhm.
company. I've recognized that, and then I'm like, okay, I'm giving myself permission to do all these things because I know that I can,
Yep.
but I have to create some type of allowance for myself where I can say, this is my time. I'm going to allow myself this time to rest, to
That-
relax, to rejuvenate, and to refresh or whatever. And I don't do that because I give people unlimited permission
mhm. To take and
to
borrow.
take.
Yep. And do you also feel that sometimes when you overextend, that when you when you're blessed with a certain skill set, that you kind of dampen or minimize how well you perform? So now you're blessed with something and you can't even give people the fullness of your blessing because you're so overextended. Uh,
Yes.
and you're taking away from yourself. Now it's something that you thoroughly enjoy that's really not that fun anymore. And
Oh,
you lost a little bit too, because you're like, well, what do I do now? Like, what do I even like to do at this point?
absolutely. I mean, it was even like writing this book, right?
Mm-hmm.
I allowed myself to write this book, right? But then I gave myself, I didn't allow myself to actually let it soak in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because then
Right.
I was like, oh, I gotta give, 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 I gotta put this book out. And God's like, settle down.
Yeah.
Give it some time to marinate. Because I was just
Mm-hmm.
telling somebody, anything that marinates, I want to be a piece of marinated meat. I want to be flavorful on the inside and
Mm,
the outside. I
do.
just don't want you to taste me and only get the outside, where it's like, oh, this is good. And then you're like, all right,
It
we
ain't
all know what a good piece of meat tastes like.
That's true. That's a really great. I love it. I think that's really great because that's what it becomes. People see you at face value and they're like, "Oh, I like that. I want to be led by her. I want to be supported by her. I want to be friends with her." And then as they get to know you, they realize that you're like really a complete mess. And it's not that there's anything wrong with being a complete mess. Sometimes life gets messy, and I'm really big on accepting who we are in that moment, but also recognizing, what is going on with us. So I don't want to act like being a big mess is a problem, because most of the time I'm a big mess. But when you are trying to inspire and you're trying to bless someone with the gift that God is giving you, you have to make sure that, like you said, you're good on the inside and outside so that you can give the fullness that people can receive and be inspired by you.
Right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Somebody just commented, they said, you have to take time to fill your cup in order to be able to give to others, else you'll have nothing else.
Oh,
That's so funny that you say that, and I'm looking for something in my book because I wrote something about that. And Ayanla says this, and she says, what's in your cup is for you,
mm,
but what is out of your cup is for others. And
that's
she
right.
said, and a lot of times when you allow people to rob you and you don't, then they don't even know that they're robbing you because
Mm,
they're taking something that
mm,
they don't even know that you don't have, that you're pretending to have.
wow.
And
Wow.
so it's interesting that we don't recognize that, like, and you have to fill your cup. And what that looks like is like creating something close to your foundation. I think my connection might be a little fuzzy.
Okay, you look great.
Um, but creating something, having a connection with a foundation to be able to fill your cup. Because
Right.
a lot of times we're not able to fill something when you don't have a container to pour something out of.
That's right. That's right. And then you run at what I call a deficit, running on fumes.
Yep.
Just spirals out of there, and then you just lose connection with everything that, like I said, has value to you. And a lot of us as women, specifically as moms, we do that to ourselves. And then, before we know it, I mean, some of us are able to get back on track, but a lot of us run, on a deficit for so long, you kind of lose track of who you are, where you're going. I think especially, I don't know what it is about the 40s. I find that a lot of my friends who are around that 40 range, we get to this point where, I mean, it's not about being super sad. I mean, some people deal with depression, but you get to this point where you're really trying to reconnect and try to figure out, like, what is it? What is it that I'm doing? Like, what is my goal here? Like, I had a plan, everything was going great. And you start to realize that you have been pushing yourself so hard in feeding into your children and your job and your life, that a lot of times a lot of us lose track and we run into deficit, and you spend time trying to figure out how to get back. But how do you do that when you're still overcommitting?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm laughing at you because I'm like, I just put up there, I think you like that ish. I had to recognize how much stuff I had become comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
How much stuff that I was like, oh no, lady, you like this.
Yeah.
This brings you comfort because you continue to do this. You complain
Mm-hmm.
about it, but you like this ish. You literally like this. Something about this makes you perk up a little bit, even though you're like, and you're like, you have all the tools to change or something. And you're right about being at a deficit, because when you are negative in your account, I never understood why the bank charges you a $20 fee when you already didn't have the money, right? And you're like, I already don't have the money. Why are you going to charge me another $20 because I overdrafted 20 more dollars, and stuff like that. And you learn those lessons when you're young, but it's kind of like what God does. Yeah, you withdrew and you didn't have that. So now you have to steal it from somebody.
Mm-hmm. Or you got to pay the fee,
The
pay the cost
fee.
for
You know what I'm saying?
overdrafting.
And that fee can be an extreme tiredness. It can be overwhelmness. It could be you complaining. It could be so much. And I always ask people, do you have enough emotional currency saved up
That's deep. That's deep. And how do
to actually handle all the stuff that you choose to be disobedient in,
you?
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how do you build currency? How do you fill the bank up?
Yeah. I mean, and for me, filling the bank up is reading the word of God, being around people like you,
Oh, beautiful.
being around a group of people that are encouraging, always reminding me who I am, who's
Mhm,
God's called me to be. And then
mhm.
the interesting thing about me and your relationship is it really just took off last year. We've known
Yeah.
each other for a long time and stuff like that. And then it was like, phew. But what I loved about our relationship not about like past tense, is that you hear God talking to you. So and you might not even notice it, but when I need to hear something that God's reminding me of myself, you speak it into me. And
Oh,
that is the currency. That's
yeah,
how I make money. That's
yeah.
that's 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 how I build my currency. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
you filling me up and
Right.
saying you're a bomb, sis. You're dope. Da, 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 da. I'm with you. I support you. You got to get through this. And even just the whole situation about like my kid and her asthma, like you helping me through that and me seeing the difference between last year and this year's asthma.
Oh, wonderful.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? That's currency, because the amount of emotional currency I was using out of my savings account was stress, because she was always sick
yeah.
every year around that time, right?
Right,
And because I didn't get educated and didn't do what I was allowing,
right.
and when I allowed and gave you permission to learn from you
To be transparent so
and
that
tell you
you
like,
can.
hey, this is what's going on. You're like, hey, you got to do it this way, and da 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 da. And also to allow myself, because the one thing we also don't recognize is that allowance also allows you to receive stuff, to
Mhm.
receive good information, to receive things that need to be deposited in you. Some of us don't even give people permission to deposit good things in us, and then we wonder why our banks are depleted.
I had to work on that too. I do. I think it's, what, in a lot of ways, I think, when you said, was it sis, you like that ish? Is that what it was? I think in a lot of ways too, as women, we're kind of programmed to be that way, right? Like, I think society and culturally, we are programmed to struggle. We are programmed to take on everything. And we're programmed to be very closed off, which is going back to the transparency we were just talking about. And as I got older, I started to realize, I feel like growing up, I followed all the rules. I checked all the boxes, college, house, husband, kids, and all these career, all these different things. And I still, like I said, because I was in a deficit, I didn't feel like I wanted to be where I was at this age. But also, I learned along the way that having transparency with like-minded women, because we must point out there's a difference. You can't be transparent. Everybody can't be in your
You're
business.
absolutely right.
Everybody
Thank
can't
you
give
for
you
saying
feedback.
that.
But when you find women who have the same mindset, who are God-fearing women, opening yourself up and being honest about where you are mentally, emotionally, financially, creates an opportunity for growth, but it also creates opportunity for healing. Uh, you can't expect for everybody to fix your problems. A lot of that starts with you. And having sisterhood is just, in my opinion, one resource you can use. Second resource is your book. But it's just really taking the first step to breaking that cycle of feeling like you have to keep everything closed in, and really opening yourself up to women who will support you in the way that you
Absolutely.
support it.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that actually gets to our next thing, which is the power to choose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have the power to choose what we allow.
Yes, we do.
You know what I'm saying? And I think I love what you just said about sisterhood and us having transparency and being able to come to people that are like-minded, because my ability to come to you sometimes and just tell you when I'm weak
Mm,
is so refreshing.
likewise, likewise.
You know what I'm
It,
saying? Like, I'm not it's and the funny thing is that when we say, and I want women to understand what I'm saying when we say like-minded, when I come to Christine and I tell her I'm weak, she is not wallowing with me in my weakness.
mm,
She is reminding me how strong I am.
yep.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? She's
Mm,
not saying, "Yeah, me too, girl," and not that it's not a me too moment.
right.
She's literally hearing, like, in this moment, my girl needs to be fortified. She needs to be strengthened.
Yeah.
I there's some slats in her fence that might just need to be hammered back in.
Yeah.
Okay, I got my hammer, sis. What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you do that for me all the time, and I love that about you, because what it does is it creates me to be able to understand that the people that were not able to do that for me, because that's the other thing we do, we fear
Mm,
old relationships and
right.
old tendencies that have come back up.
Right.
But what I love about us is that we also know that we're at an age where now, we just said, we're recognizing, like, what, wait, where was I, where
Yeah. Like
I
what's going on? Like who
have
and what and why? And do I have to do this today? And I mean, it's so many questions. Every morning I get up, I lay in bed, I'm like, and I blame myself. I really do, because, like I said, I allowed myself to get to this deficit, and it's been so many years. So now I'm just like, okay, I got to get my shit together. I tell Tiffany all the time, I just got to get every time. I think every conversation starts off with, I got to get my shit together. I got to
And
get
you
my.
know what's so funny? After she says that, I then tell her, "You have your shit together,"
I
and she's
know
like, "What?"
you
And then
do.
I'm like, "This is it." Da 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 da. And she's like, "Oh,
Oh,
you're
you're like,
right."
calm down, Kristen. I'm like, okay, okay.
And, and you know what's so funny? I love that, because what it shows, and for a lot of us women, and I love that I actually just said, I didn't even mean to say that, is that when you do call and you're saying that you got to get your shit together, I'm your friend, and I'm so attentive to what you need and stuff like that. I recognize that you just have so much stuff on the table. You haven't identified what's on the table, that your shit is together. Now you're just like, "Oh wait. Oh, I do. Oh yeah." And because it's just like, it's a lot of stuff,
Right.
right? It looks like it's not together, because you can't just go over to the table and pick it
Or
up or whatever.
in a bow, like I want it to be. And so you remind me that it doesn't have to be wrapped up in a bow. A lot of times it's case by case. So sometimes, you take it for what it is, but also you also remind me where I am contributing to my own problems. It goes back to having transparent friends, and also knowing that you're not going to always agree with everything your friend says. You're not always going to agree with the feedback. And sometimes you may not agree with it, but it could be the truth. It's a lot of different things. But I think the important thing is, when getting back to a power to choose, is choosing to be open-minded,
Hmm.
to agree, choosing to straight up disagree, or agree to disagree. It's making that choice to open yourself up when you cannot pull your own shit together.
Absolutely. The thing I love about the power to choose also is you have the power to choose what type of intent, what the intent of the other person that is you're trying to get this stuff from has. You have the power to understand that. You have the power to choose and ask.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the thing about us is, my intent is only to build you up.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's to see you at the top. And
Right.
sometimes we forget that because we allow sometimes bad things. Oh, you think I'm not doing this? Oh, you think I'm not. No, that's
Yeah.
allowing your negative thoughts, and we give our
That-
negative thoughts permission to
Yep.
invade our head without any boundaries or anything, right?
ex-
I
Exactly.
I'm learning a lesson right now about letting my dogs roam freely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I'm shampooing up stuff that I don't want to shampoo up, right? And you have to recognize that your emotions are untrained.
Right.
Majority of your emotions are untrained. And so
Yeah.
if you don't have them trained, they'll walk around in your brain leaving toxic turds everywhere
That's right. Yeah.
and
They-
pissing on the floor
yeah. Yeah.
and stuff. One other thing you said is that you said that everything, sometimes you want things to be wrapped up in a bow. And I just want people to create the picture in your mind. When we unwrap a present, we don't even care that it was wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
We are just very concerned that it's for us and that it looks pretty, because
Mm-hmm.
usually what's inside the package depends on if the person knew the intent of your heart to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we have to focus not so much on the bow, because the bow is a distraction,
Right.
you know,
Right.
because inside whatever the present is work to be done.
Right. Right.
Whatever it could be. If it's a brand new Lego set,
Yeah.
you got to put it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? If it's a
Yeah.
brand new husband, you got to put it together.
Right. Yeah.
If it's an old husband, you got to put it together. If it's your kids,
And it takes time to do
it
that too.
takes time. It takes
Intention, like you said, the intentional time.
Yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I think we have the power to choose the best things for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm learning, not necessarily the hard way anymore, but in a way where it's valuable when I'm choosing, because sometimes I don't choose the right thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But my power to choose on what I allow in my life, to know what I need in my life that's going to create joy or create stress, I get to choose that.
Yeah. Well, another good example of choosing is, right now, so I'm always like super into my girls. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm into my girls. I'm into every aspect of their being, their social, their mental health, emotional health, their social being, social needs, their academic, extracurricular needs. And so lately we've been doing a lot, especially since COVID took so much people engagement, social interaction away from us. So when the vaccine came out for adults and we got more comfortable with just being out with masks, like we went full throttle. We were like in all types of activities. I think Libby is in every single club possible at her school. And I found myself like really high stress trying to make sure they stay on task and focus. And why aren't you doing this? You need to be working on this. You need to practice more. And I started to realize, I'm like, shit, girl, like if I'm stressed out trying to get them to reconnect with school and perform this with piano and student government and this, that, and the other. I'm like, imagine the amount of stress my 11-year old, my 9-year-old under, right? And in reality, I had to tell myself, like, for one, they're great. Like my kids are fucking amazing, right? They are rock stars. They're the sweetest girls. They're
Yeah.
so appropriate in their behavior. And it's like I'm putting all this pressure on them. And I don't want their childhood to be centered in stress,
Ooh.
forming. And I feel like I'm creating the same cycle that I grew up in. And that's not to say I'm just saying, I don't think my mom put that on me. I think just naturally who I am as a person, I put that on myself. But I
Yeah.
feel like I'm creating that same mindset in my girls. It's not that I don't want them to be serious about life and having goals. It's more so I want them to understand the difference between taking on commitments, creating success for themselves, but also enjoying life. And so I told my husband, I think what we should do in the spring is focus more on activities that are just fun, right? Like instead of doing something competitive in nature, I mean, we might put them in softball, but I know Libby's goal is not to be like an all-star softball college, high school. So we may still do that just for exercise, but really start focusing more on activities that are just about having fun. They're very creative girls. They like to sing and dance and draw and all that kind of stuff. Focusing on activities that's mostly just about participating and connecting and bonding. And so in choosing to decrease the stress level for myself, I'm also trying to teach my girls self-allowance for them, and choosing you know and one thing I want to say before I go off on this tangent is that Livy did a really great job, because she came up to me one day after school, and there was an activity. I can't remember what it was. There was something that we talked about, her, I think, running for class president. And she's like, Mom, I think I'm going to sit this one out.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, okay, because she's an overachiever. I was like, oh, I was surprised. I was like, did something happen? Something wrong? She's like, no, I think my plate is full and I just need to pull back. And I
Oh,
was
I love that.
like, okay, whatever
I
you.
love that.
She made a choice. She made a choice, and she's 11. And I want to encourage that. I want to find the balance between holding herself accountable for growth, but also knowing when she has to take a step back. And so I think that choosing can start. We don't have to wait until we're 40 or 30s or 50s to start choosing. We can start choosing when we're kids, or teach our
Absolutely.
kids how to choose. Yeah.
Absolutely. Funny that you said that, because I talked about this a few weeks ago about how things are transferable to your
Mm-hmm.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how deception is transferable to your kids when you be lying, and then your kids then think the lie is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's funny because telling this story, and I was having a conversation with my dad, and he was like, "Oh, you told something that wasn't true," and da 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 da. And I said, "Well, sir, the inaccuracies came from the person that the story was about."
Wow.
I said, "So you transferred that.
You do. Yeah.
You have the accurate story, but you chose to allow the inaccuracies of the story to continue, and
That's
you argued about the inaccuracies instead of just telling the accurate story."
right.
And
Right.
so, and then it's transferred. So what you said to me, like even with transferred self-allowance, I'm trying to allow my kids to choose also. I'm giving them the power to choose about what they want. And there's some things that you're like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna parent you.
Yeah.
But then you're like, no, if I'm stressed, I'm teaching them how to be stressed.
Yes. And that, yes.
If
Yes.
I'm loving, I'm teaching them how to be loving.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody treats me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing my kids the power to choose of how to still be kind.
Yes. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's self-allowance, and it's whatever you allow and you give permission to. And I
Yeah.
want to give my kids permission to allow the things that bring them joy
Right.
also. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And I think that when we get so caught up in what other people are doing and
Mhm.
social media and the memes and stuff like that. I just saw a meme that was like, when I feel disrespected, I get disrespectful. A whole bunch of people are commenting like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And I'm like, but yet you want grace and mercy to be offered up to you when you do something.
And that require and also being disrespectful or having to compete on that level requires so much more energy.
That I don't have.
It yeah.
I barely have this to give you today. Like,
Yes.
people don't recognize me and you getting ready for this 30-minute talk that we're about to end. Like, we literally were like, okay, what do we have to do? It's a lot.
It is. I mean, I'm literally sitting outside waiting for my daughter to come out of musical theater camp. Like I'm like,
See, you're
yeah.
killing it, but you're allowing yourself. And here's what I love about the self-allowance that you did today. Because I asked this question: have you asked yourself, "Sis, is it you lately?" Sis, is it you does not necessarily mean a bad thing. It just means, is it you? Is it you?
Right.
And I love that today, because what people don't know is you text me this morning and you were frantic in this text message. You're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I got so much.
Fire text. Boom, 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 boom.
And it was so funny because at the end, she recognized who she was.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave herself the power to choose. And she said, not only am I going to go to this, I'm going to show up and I'm going to tell people, because this is you ministering to people.
Right.
I'm in the car, but I'm also showing you that it's possible to get on a podcast quietly and look beautiful, look bomb, give my education, teach people. And then when my daughter gets in the car, be happy because I did two things.
And I was so proud. And it's an honor to be on the show. I mean, I had to make it work, right?
You're so sweet. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching us today. And ask yourself lately, sis, is it you? Bro, is it you? You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Right.
And to know that you have the power to choose, and you allow what happens to yourself. So give yourself that. And then next week we'll be talking about self-acceptance. I have a guy on the show next week, and we're going to be talking about the things that you accept.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so it's going to be amazing. Thank you so much, Christina. I love you
Have
so much.
love you
Um,
more.
and everybody, thank you for joining us today with Talking with Tiffynee. I'll see you next Sunday.